Hello, buffer timers. A reminder, there are 5 inner lights. But before we discuss how many inner lights there actually are, let's go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek.
I'm Wind Grace and or Josh.
I'm Shereese from The Sci-Fi Savage.
I'm Scott from Opinions No One Cares About, aka Batai the Third.
My name is Vanessa, and I host a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek.
All right. We are going to jump right into the inner light. I don't think we have any news or anything fun. Let's start with this tree. Was the symbolic tree worth the loss of water?
You know, this is such a good question because, and I think this every time I watch this episode, which, by the way, I like this episode, but it's like not in my top 20. But anyways, every time I watch it, I'm just like, part of me feels like hope is helpful. It keeps people from giving up. It keeps people from rioting in the streets, right? So there's definitely a place for hope. Then the other part of me is just like, but I'd rather make sure my kids had enough water. Do you know what I mean? It's like everybody in the town gives a little of their water rations to make sure this tree survives in a terrible drought where everything else will die for hope. I don't know. So I feel really torn about this symbolic tree. And maybe that's because I personally don't have enough symbology in my life. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, they don't need a symbol. They need atmospheric condensers.
Maybe they're under the impression that this is temporary, that like this will be a symbol of perseverance through a difficult time, not really understanding that this is the trajectory that they're on, that it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, when they plant it, they didn't know because it's not this like when they plant it is when Picard first jumps into Cayman, and then he's not told till what seems like decades later that we knew this was coming. It's
when the scientists figured it out. I also, but it also reminds me of Dune. If you guys have not seen the first Dune, spoiler alert, it's a desert planet, but the palace has all of these like palm trees. And I forget how much they said. I think it was like 100 gallons of water or 20 gallons of water, some obnoxious amount of water these trees take every single day on a planet where everyone is like dying of thirst. And in that sense, it wasn't a symbol of hope, right? It was a symbol of like obnoxious riches. But I had the same thought watching Dune that I had watching this episode where I was just like, oh, save the water. I don't know. Some part of me just would rather have the people drinking it than the symbolic tree enjoying it. But I think there is a place for hope. And I think that's better than people being like, well, we're doomed, right?
That as an LA person, yes. It's like there's, the native plants could be a lot more efficient that way. And I wonder, is this like a specifically water thirsty plant that they're using as a symbol of hope? Or is it just like something that can,
it's a little hardy.
Yeah.
It's like an orchid or something. It looks like
the thirstiest tree on the whole world.
We're in a drought. I'm going to plant an almond tree.
And then make almond milk. Like 30 gallons of water for like 1 liter of milk or something.
And then pour it into the tree.
And the thing is, to make almond milk, you need water. Like it's
like way too much water.
Yes.
Wasteful.
Why does the device only affect Picard and not the whole crew or some random ensign on deck 15?
That random ensign on deck 15 was actually shielded. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh.
I wonder why it was designed to affect just one person in any case. I mean, presumably we could say there's some technology that detects the highest authority on the ship or something, but it still seems kind of pointless to have this piece of technology that's supposed to hold the culture's entire identity and memories and everything else. And like, it's the last of them that they're trying to share with the universe. And they've got this one-shot device where they're going to beam everything into exactly one person's brain and then say at the end, person, now it's up to you to carry on our memories and legacies and tell the world everything about us. It's kind of a lot to put on one person.
Hopefully you're
Spread the
smart enough
love.
to retain this.
I'm gonna say it wasn't supposed to work that way, and it accidentally activated his Borg leftovers that they thought was his Irumodic syndrome.
Oh.
That's a good one.
Because the Borg are still playing the long game at this point.
I think it's because this episode's purpose is to sort of give Picard a taste of family life, the thing that, you know, they sort of go back and forth on the show. Yeah, he's the main character. That's why. But technically speaking, I think I don't know if this piece of technology is really complicated enough to necessarily like choose. Oh, Nadia says agreed. What if the probe had connected with someone who can't communicate or can, but who's someone who doesn't have a platform for people to hear him or her?
What if it
Like
was
someone who
Martin?
couldn't share the message. Yeah. And this was their one
Right.
shot.
Or Spock?
And to that point, I would say like Picard immediately, like, you know, they were pretty adamant about the purpose of this probe being for Picard to go forth, sally forth, and tell everybody, but they chose the most private person on the entire ship, maybe besides Worf or something. And he doesn't say anything to Riker. He waits until he's alone and then pulls out the piccolo. Don't we all?
Well said. And so the
Yes.
episode from Voyager is a total like copy paste of this one, which I'm blanking on the name, but you know, when everybody gets mentally assaulted by like the war ruins and stuff.
Is it
It's
just
like,
Oh,
or
Memorial.
something?
Yeah,
Oh,
Memorial. That's it.
yeah.
Yeah. So this is like a copy paste of that, where that's trying to take it to the next level. Like, what if more than one person could experience it? But also, let's make it even more traumatic. But also, let's make them the aggressors. But also, they added a few more layers. But in either case, I feel like they're both equally ineffectual for what they're trying to do. Because they seem to just be causing a lot of pain. However, it is nice to see Picard like being a different person. I feel like we could have achieved the same thing with him getting stranded on a planet in like out of temporal phase, like that whole sort of thing,
Okay, yeah.
like they did with the Doctor, you know,
Yeah.
and it's like,
There was also an episode of Voyager where there was like a destroyed planet and Paris and Janeway went back to when before the planet was destroyed and saw the civilization or whatever. Like it wasn't a very good episode.
Parallax.
Yeah.
It's like
Yes.
the third episode. They
No,
were like,
yes.
let's do time travel again.
Yeah, it's like,
Well, yeah, it was
but
like right
time
at the beginning.
travel, yeah, it wasn't like that long ago. With this, it was like 1,000 years ago. So again, that sort of buttresses this probe's ineffectual nature, I think.
And you are thinking about a different episode. You might be thinking about masks.
Mhm.
Oh.
Or you might be thinking of the Schizoid Man, where Data meets his grandfather and he uploads a bunch of information to the computer on his way into cyberspace.
Himself, actually, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think about masks often, but that was
But yeah,
a
in this
one.
episode, there's no information transferred to the computer. No, it only goes to Picard's head, and then the entire probe, this entire probe, shuts
Yeah.
down forever.
Yeah, you'd think they would want more than just projecting into somebody's head because the probe just shut down after, Picard got that info. So it's like, like Nadia had asked, what if it's somebody that was like nonverbal or couldn't communicate what they had learned about this? Wouldn't they want like more ways for people to interact with it? It does seem kind of weird.
Or like my
Yeah.
question was, make it rechargeable. Like maybe instead of single use, recharged by the sun or the star that's in this particular system.
It's got
So
like a
more than one
micro.
person?
It's got like a micro USB
a
charger,
USB,
and
USB,
everybody's
yeah.
got USB-C. So
I mean, you're lucky someone hailed it and the Klingons didn't show up and just blow it out of the sky for no good reason.
Or the Borg assimilate it and start putting their
Right.
thoughts, into other people's brains from a distance.
There you go. Doomsday scenario.
Yeah, I don't have a FireWire port anymore, so I wouldn't be able to communicate with this probe. So we were talking about Picard a bit there. Which has the bigger impact on his life? Becoming Borg or becoming Cayman?
Well, the Borg got a whole
Seeing-
movie.
Yeah, seeing where we've gone with the movies and the show Picard, definitely the Borg. Because this has come
Yeah.
up, what, twice again? Once when he's trying to hook up with another redhead, and then I think there's just one other episode he's playing his flute for some reason.
But which one should have made a bigger difference is maybe the question. I don't know. Being assimilated and then unassimilated seems pretty traumatic. But also living an entire lifetime with like family and friends and a community, and then the planet dies and the star goes supernova, I feel like should also have a really big lasting effect on one.
Like this kind of seems like it. I mean, I know they weren't human, but for the sake of a term, like the Borg took away of his humanity. This gave him humanity. So it's kind of like they were polar opposites of each other, but they were both hijacking his brain. So
Like, I think the Borg thing might have had a much bigger impact because it perverted everything he was stood for. In addition, Wolf 359, that wouldn't have happened without him. So he has to live with thousands and thousands of people dead because of his knowledge that the Borg took advantage of. Sadly, I think trauma has a much deeper impact on people than necessarily even positive things. Like, even if like this was a wonderful thing for him to experience, there was some loss there, but like and you can see traces of this come up later. I think in the movies too, when they, as much as I'm not a huge fan of those, family moments in Generations, like that does, echo this. Yeah.
I think this had the bigger impact on Picard, at least for a short amount of time. The Borg thing really impacted him for the rest of his life. This impacted him for about 2 more years. People think of it ending with Darren when he like puts the flute away after she's almost killed, and then she goes off the Enterprise. But I think it really is Generations where it like truly ends for him when his brother's family dies. So I mean, I guess the Borg had a longer lasting impact on him, but this had a bigger impact on him.
I would maybe agree with Vanessa about maybe the positive negative, right? Is that this had a really, really positive impact on him. And maybe that's why we don't see it, in future episodes, because it's just like it made him a more well-rounded person versus the Borg made him terrible. And to Vanessa's point, not only did he kill thousands and thousands of people or orchestrated the killing of them, they were Starfleet people. They were like his people. So it was even more personal. That episode where I think it's, oh gosh, I always forget the name of it, but the episode where everybody's brainwashed and they think they're in a war and they're not. And then he like kills a couple people, like he blows up a few ships in that fake war. I mean, it's a real war, but he doesn't know, what's going on. He feels bad about that, but he's kind of like, man, that's unfortunate. Let me send a little apology note. You know what I mean? But this, like Wolf 359 was like his people. It was more personal. Sorry, what were you going to say, Josh?
Oh, I was just agreeing. It was Conundrum, I think, was the title.
Yes, in Conundrum, exactly. So I think it's like they both impacted him, but I feel like this smoothed the edges on the inside, so it's less visible, and it's not something he's going to get angry about. It's not something he's going to, smash all his little ships over. And I think they could have played it up more in future episodes. Like he could have been softer or kinder, or I don't know. He could have had a different feel, but he really doesn't.
I think also like Picard struggles to be comfortable around children. That could have been something that was dealt with. Like Picard Day could have gone down a little differently had, this episode had the bigger impact. But he continues to seemingly be really uncomfortable around them.
Well, did you see in the scene when they were like naming the baby boy and the daughter was like outside playing and they were like, Marigold, get in here. And he's like good girl, and walks past her like there's no hugs and kisses. There's no hey there. There's nothing, none of that.
He's such
And even
a
when
good dad.
yeah, and even when she's grown, he's just like, what are you doing filling your head with science and nonsense? You should be filling your head with boys. Okay.
I mean,
I
like,
think he's fine with kids.
I guess that, like, I guess to speak to Picard Day though, like, I guess that time that he was like stuck in the elevator with the kids and with Radish Kid and company. I love Radish Kid. He's me on the
Oh, that's great.
I feel like he handled that situation then better than he, like, with this in his background than he would have otherwise. But they didn't directly tie the two things.
All right. Would Conundrum have been better if there was classic elevator music? Would this Extra Life have been better if there had been random music?
Or some Fair Jacques that one of the random
Fair.
colonists
It's
were
got
singing.
yes.
What if he
No.
tooted around Faith of the Heart? That was his piece of majesty.
Every time they play the theme on the flute in this, I feel like it's First Noel. It's definitely a take off of that song.
It's
I thought it
lovely. I
was-
love the flute. I love that
thought
touch.
it was the theme to TNG. I thought it was like just a slight interpolation of it, or but yeah, he's like definitely playing like hot cross buns
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something earlier.
Oh yeah. Would it have worked better if it was bagpipes? Or just something
No.
more excessive?
No, that would be on the
Ooh.
Scottish planet, and we're seasons away from that.
Oh, I love
So
me some bagpipes.
Well, here's an interesting what if question we had about this.
You didn't
If
even get
the-
bagpipes on that Scottish planet.
We didn't. We didn't get bagpipes
Yeah, we did. I think
at the
we did
funeral.
At the
Didn't we get
funeral.
bagpipes?
There was.
Or how else would we know it was a Scotland recreation?
Yeah, we would have been clueless. No idea. The accents wouldn't
idea.
have given it away.
Not at all.
So as far as fun what if questions,
Yeah.
so if Worf had been the one targeted, would everybody in this simulation have been Klingon?
I feel like they should be.
I feel like
for
it's
this
more
October.
likely that we would have seen Michael Dorn without the makeup,
Ooh.
because it just seems more likely they're trying to make people look Resican, or however that looks. But then again, we don't know for sure what they look like. So yeah, maybe they were proto Klingon.
But proto Klingon. Well, but I'm thinking since they made everybody look like Picard, I feel like the probe was interacting with the human part of him to make it relatable to him. Like they were all
Mhm.
speaking English, etc. So that's why I feel like
Mhm.
if it was Worf, they should all be Klingon and act more Klingon.
but the point of the probe was to tell people about their people, like specifically about this culture and this alien world or whatever. So I don't know how it would have gone if they picked somebody that was Klingon, because I think if they did, the episode would be incredibly different. It would be about the culture shock of like this woman being like, "You're my husband, that life you had before," that would have gone down completely differently. I think like it would have been a culture clash. So they picked somebody whose culture is close enough somehow with this 1,000-year-old probe that like it wouldn't be like such a difficult transmission of ideas, whatever those ideas may be.
That's a good point. Like, would it have adjusted if it picked someone who was not straight, or somebody who was,
Or Data.
somebody who
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
conform to having a wife? Would it have been a guy in that position, or would it have been just, I'm one of your triplets or whatever? Different cultural thing happened. I don't know. A cogenitor.
A species with 5 genders or whatever.
Or like that Alien where there's like it was like early TNG days where it was like a deaf person, a blind
Mhm.
person, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like how
The
would
man
that
with the chorus.
right?
Riva.
I want to say like silent as a whisper or something like that. I don't know. Whispers in the title.
Loud as a whisper, I
Listen
think.
up.
Loud as a
Yeah,
whisper.
loud
Okay.
as whisper.
That makes less sense than what I said, which makes more sense. But that was the point. Um,
Love that even more because the actor they got to play Riva is actually deaf.
yeah, which they weren't going to do at first, and then they decided to go in that direction, which I think was good call super progressive, unlike this whole episode, which is all like, let me make you a dish. Let me have a baby. That's all I've ever wanted. Which always bothered me about this episode, which I do think is a very sweet episode. But like, it's just always bugged me so much, which again goes back to your question, Dustin, of like, and maybe Vanessa's got it right, that the probe has to find someone whose values and cultures align enough, because picking anyone else with any other frame of reference, even picking someone from 2025, it'd be like, nobody works here, or like, what? No, my job is to take care of this tree. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, but the thing is, they seem almost too good. Like even the potential bad guy, like the administrator or whatever, like his like darkest character flaw is, yeah, we know already what you found out. We're just not telling anyone because we don't want to cause a panic. It seems like it's just a little bit edging toward the line of they've whitewashed their culture a little bit for future observers. Because nothing seriously bad ever happens except for, the fact that their planet's going to be destroyed.
They didn't show the billionaire out there just pouring water out all the time, just like,
Yeah.
Watering their almond tree.
Yeah.
With the tears of the rest of the villagers.
So here's just kind of a practical question. Why are the doors smaller than the average height of the people that live in this place?
That is a really good point.
So the practical answer, and I have no idea if this is
I don't even
actually
think I
accurate
noticed
or
that,
not,
much less understood it.
is I heard that part of the reason they chose to do this episode is because they found this standing location. It was already built, so they didn't have to build any sets. They just filmed it there. So what it was originally made for, I have no idea, but they probably just used what they had.
Yeah, I always assumed
universe-
it was another set reused, but
Yeah. In universe, maybe that's an indication of how they actually looked. They were shorter people. They looked like Sarjenka's people, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, Spot. I thought you said Spock before, but you said Spot. What if the probe picked Spot? The probe should have chosen Data. Now, Data actually would have been able to record all the information and then transfer it into the computer, so other people could.
Mm-hmm.
He could have transferred it into the holodeck, and then lots of people could have experienced Catan.
But how is he gonna? Well, I guess because it's a computer simulation, it doesn't have to be real. But he couldn't impregnate the wife.
He's fully
That would have been
functional.
an
He could have found a
interesting
way.
conversation coming back. Like, yes, I've had several children. How did that happen?
I fathered.
Oh, this is the same set from Journey's End. Interesting. I wonder if it's the same set from Preemptive Strike, because they look similar. And probably the same set from when Worf went to.
Oh yeah.
There's certain things about this culture I wish they sort of expanded upon, and this could have been one of them. Maybe there's some sort of like spiritual reason that they could have come up with anything, and it's just this engineering anomaly or architectural anomaly where they're just like, yeah, we're just bending down every single time, and their son's pretty tall too. So
in universe, I'm gonna say aesthetics. It's kind of like how our cars look good at the time, and then 10 years later, you're like, wow, that car is really ugly. And then 10 years later, you're like, oh, it's vintage. I'm just gonna say it was the style in universe.
Yeah.
The more you know.
Oh, hey, Tasha.
Gotcha.
Dustin, did you just have that picture lying around, buddy?
Yeah,
That's amazing.
I have a folder with like 10,000 shots from random. I don't have every episode, but almost every episode of Star Trek in there. I have a few pics.
Seems to be pretty close.
But I can't find the one. I cannot find Preemptive Strike.
Maybe you haven't screenshot that one.
Or some of them are listed because it's not screenshots that I take. They're all from trekcore.com, and some of them are labeled like something weird, just like PDVD and stuff. So it's, yeah, anyway. Is this Richard Reel's best role in Trek? And if you don't know who that is
it Bataille?
Bataille.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I don't know how many roles he had, but I freaking love Bataille. He just seemed like such a jolly buddy. Like,
the
I'd love
least-
to have him as
yeah.
my neighbor.
He has at least 3, and I feel like there's at least
Yeah.
one more. He was also Seamus in the Fairhaven episodes of
Yep.
Oh Tommy Me Boy of Voyager. He
Buy me a pint.
also plays Phlox's
The
friend
scientist.
Dr. Lucas in
Yep.
in
Mhm.
Enterprise.
I feel like he might have played an alien at some point, but can't remember if he did or not.
Probably.
But both of those other 2 roles, he plays a bit more. Even the Enterprise one, which is serious, he's more of a goofy character. This is probably his most serious role, I suppose.
I think all of the roles show his range, and I can't really put one above another. I think he's just does the damn thing every time. He's great.
I think
loved
I
him
like
in
him as
this.
Seamus best. There's something about that Irish accent that just hits me. This dude has like over 400 credits, and some of his earliest
Office
work
Space was the
is
best.
Star Trek. Yeah, he invented the jump to conclusions, Matt. He's that guy. Should the probe experience have been voluntary?
Yes. I
Mm,
know that. I think so.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know if I would have thought that if I was the dying planet 1,000 years ago, but definitely me now is like as similar to again with the Voyager episode where at the end when they powered up the thing so it could traumatize future people, they left a probe outside saying, "Hey, just so you know, if you come in here, this was going to happen to you." Yeah, some kind of on button. I don't know. Yes, I
Yeah.
would have preferred it.
I think the reason that they didn't, again, is sort of plot convenience. A ship with 1,000 people in it, they could have found someone to consent. Yes, but then there's
Yeah.
no stakes back on the ship. They have to make it a mystery to sort of like create a certain amount of tension there. But yes, I would think a society that bills itself or appears to be the propaganda machine that is this probe makes it seem as if it's ideal and they care about each other and they're cooperative and they're agrarian, they're not aggressive, but then they're going to send a probe and just drill into someone's brain without their permission and be like, yeah, we're just going to paralyze you for about 20 minutes and not, and you're just going to be lying there. And if you try to cut off the signal to this thing, you're going to die. Like, that's pretty severe for a peaceful society to do.
Yeah, Nadia makes a good point where there could have been some kind of like, they could have made the probe itself more mysterious and spooky. And when they're interacting with it, it's like the only someone's got to go in, or someone's got to activate it, or someone's got to give it permission. Who's it going to be? And then, someone could be like, I'll do it, and then it's like, oh, what's it going to be? And they get in, and you're like, oh, it's fairy tale land. Oh, okay. Well, what's the problem then?
But that's coercion rather than asking consent. Consent would be, I can say no and walk away from this. But if you coerce somebody, you have to like say, well, if you don't do this, this is going to happen, kind of thing.
Well, I mean, but they could have had it where if they wanted to get into it, access it, then you have to interact with it, or they could just put it back in space or take it to the Daystrom Institute. Not like someone has to go into it or the ship's going to explode or something like that. Because then that's the same thing. Then in that case, don't even give us the choice. Just like, let us get this over with.
I would see Picard actually deciding to do it if they said something like, we want to impart on you our last wisdom and also our power source is dying and you're our last chance. Our whole history will be forgotten if one of you doesn't do it now. I could see Picard being like, all right, we can't let that happen. But that would then ruin the fun of the show, I guess, if someone decides to do it.
Yeah, if somebody deciding would take away the scary factor, because the whole point was like, we don't know what it's doing and it's going to kill him and let's destroy it. Oh no, if we destroy it, it's going to destroy him. Like that, like to Vanessa's point that gave us the stakes. And I guess it had to, because if you take that out, there's no meat on the bone. There's no stakes in the like on the planet, on Catan. It's just like, we're all dying. There's a drought. Our sun's going nova. That's really sad.
I suppose the other option could have been not to show us the beginning, just have Picard waking up here, and then it showed maybe at the
Then a
end
flashback?
that he just like after he wakes up, it's like, well, you decided to do this. Like when they're trying to tell him, like he's like, oh, what just happened? I just lived a whole life. Like, don't you remember? You decided to go over there and experience this history. But I still think that might have robbed it of the emotional impact he was supposed to feel from it.
Also, they also needed something for the crew to do on this show, was like worry about him, you know.
That's a really good point, Nadia.
I mean, these are the shortcomings of the probe in general, right? It's
I think it's a shortcoming of Trek, because they often paint a planet with a monoculture. It's like one planet, one culture, one leader, that's it. And like that I mean, even on Vulcan, that's not the case. So
yeah, it's pretty rare that a Star Trek planet has more than like 2 separate cultures, and usually they're at war with each other.
It's one of those dreams that feels longer than it really was. That's exactly what it was. So he lived a whole lifetime. It was only 25 minutes, real lifetime, but he was in time dilation because it was all in his mind. But I don't think in this case it makes any difference because he still experienced an entire lifetime. So regardless of the amount of minutes or seconds, he felt an entire lifetime's worth of emotions.
I think what the comment is saying, though, is like, did he just feel like he experienced that whole time, or was it just like shifting through parts of it at a time, and then like he kind of felt like there were more of the things that happened in between?
Yeah. Like, did he only experience what we actually watched?
Right.
Was the interim not actually happening?
Yeah,
we just got the highlight reel.
That's a good question, and I think
Here's why it seems so like.
Yeah, I think it's the same though. Like, I've had really, like I'm sure many of you have, super vivid dreams, like extremely vivid, where I wake up with my heart racing, or I wake up feeling like that thing really happened. So even if he only experienced what we saw, and then he filled in the gaps with his brain, he still experienced a lifetime. You know what I mean?
Because I can't imagine a third of this program was just him sleeping. And then like 5 years of just using the bathroom. I don't think they programmed all of that in, but who knows?
And for the amount of time that, like, I always think about, like, when they're trying to disrupt the probe on the bridge of the Enterprise, like, that's a thing that they tried for like 30 seconds for them, but wouldn't that have been like 2 years in the simulation that he would have been like just knocked out?
Coma.
Tasha, so in theory there's at least 2, because the Cerritos had one in that episode where it's like, I missed my wife, when they the treasure box, the Betazoid treasure box ends up
That
inside
darn
of
treasure
it.
box.
I miss my wife, who always told me to put my shoes away.
Well, now that you've said that, let's bring up that question. Are the worst final words ever, put your shoes away? I can't think of worse words.
I hate you, maybe? Oh, you know what might be worse? There was that episode. Oh gosh, what's the name of this episode? Me and my co-host on the TG podcast just called it the old inning. It was like Benjamin Button. So it's this episode with this guy who was really old, and he was getting younger and younger and younger, and then he died because this condition. Do you know the one I'm talking about? Too short a season. Yes. No, terrible, awful episode. So bad. But he goes to this planet because he's like an ambassador or something, and there's a war, and he's the only one who can talk it through because the guy who's in charge.
Yeah, and he actually was like the person who brokered sending arms to this planet. So
but somehow he
both sides.
And somehow he can, don't forget to flush. That could also be worse. And so, but when he dies, like his mortal blood enemy is just like, rest well, friend, or something like that, which also makes no sense. So I would add that underneath, put your shoes out, and then not as good as don't forget to flush.
My final words are going to be : You're going
to be like, everyone, I need one last word with my wife. :
I need a moment with my husband. Who talks to their children
So
that way?
weird.
That like I've that's the that it indicates to me that the gentlemen on TNG have only spent just a little bit amount of time with their wives. Like that's how they write these women characters. It's like they make baby, they make food, and they wife. They are wife.
And they pick up
Yeah.
my trash and they take my shoes in for me so I don't have to clean up after myself.
Make me
They wipe
soup.
me. Yeah, like they mother me basically more than they mother our children. Clearly, because on her deathbed, she's like, please, son, away. I need a word with my husband. Which, like, any mom would really in that situation say, I need a word with your dad. Like, they would phrase the relationship in, you know, like, I don't know. The whole
Leave the
thing,
room. I need a word with that asshole.
right? I need to speak to my husband.
Like not even calling him by his name, which is such a strange thing. Like, what were her aspirations in life?
To be the best wife in
She
all.
wanted to have a baby.
There's nothing wrong, and I'm not trying to like.
But those were her aspirations. Like
right,
that's
but,
all
like,
she wanted, which is
being
fine.
a housewife is fine, but she had like zero interests, nothing.
Oh, you
So
saw how
strange.
excited she got when Picard gave her that little flirting, like, "Oh, I'm going to build something. I need your permission for." She's like, "You don't need my permission for anything. Look, I think I do for this. I'm building you a nursery."
She just needs French chalk and a clean dress. And I know only the people on the stream are going to get that joke. But
when he's looking at his telescope at the end, she's all like, oh, you've showed me this a million times. I don't understand all this fancy star stuff. You know, and it's like, okay, like
Subtle.
I don't know. I will say this character that they got to play the wife in this very like old school ideal of a wife killed it. Like she killed it. She was sweet and loving and sugary, and I think she did a great job playing. If this is the character that they wrote, which is what it seems like it was, they did a really good job casting. Because this lady just seems like she just lives for her husband, and that is just like it. And I believed it. That's
So
some death. It's Bataille, isn't it?
That explains a lot. Oh, that's why he's named Bataille.
That's why he's named Bataille Jr.
Oh, we just blew the lid wide open on this.
Marigold's middle name is Bataille. They're both named after Bataille.
Jerry.
You are the father.
Right, but they could have like given her a interest, or maybe she shares Picard's interests. Maybe she paints. Maybe she could have written a poem for the naming ceremony. I don't know, like any characteristic.
She could have played an instrument along with the flute.
Yeah, like
tambourine action or something.
Exactly.
She could have been the historian, the person who put their history in the probe.
Yeah, really none of the characters had a ton of personality. They were just set dressing to like, they were like appetizers so that he could experience this culture, like experience having a family. So they were all placeholders for friends, family, community. They were just kind of like chess pieces, but none of them were really super interesting or developed, in my opinion.
Did they all have like 6 dialogue options that he just cycled through his entire time there?
But see, Nadia, the very first thing that the wife did was like, you got to come to bed right now after like trying to. So who knows?
After feeding him soup.
Yeah, but then he was all like, nope, I will not. And it was during that today I was even like, Picard, the most asexual character in Star Trek. But no, we know that he's gotten it on at least a couple of times in his life. He's not a 42-year-old version.
That one, the lady from the Mamas and the Papas that comes back, that scientist's wife that used to be his.
Oh my gosh! And we'll
yep.
The Mannheim experiment.
We'll always have Paris.
We'll have Paris,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And Captain Lavoie.
Talk about writing female characters. Like that woman from We'll Always Have Paris is the same woman as this woman.
I have a question. If it wasn't for the simulation, do you think that she would have, demisexual, yes, for sure.
What is
Definitely.
demisexual? What is that?
Requires an emotional connection in order to consider being physical.
Huh.
And I think the one
Mhm.
exception is maybe Vaj. But like, I do wonder, like, would Picard hook up with this person were it not for this situation?
Oh, you mean like if they just met at a bar or something like that, or what do you mean? Like, is
Yeah.
this the kind of woman he would go for?
This one was not going to a bar.
Oh.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
she's
think
nothing like
it
Vaj.
is. I mean, you put her in the like old timey like 1800s French dress that we get in in Generations, and she's pretty much that woman though. So yeah, he just like, it's weird for him to drop into just being the husband to this woman that he has no idea. For all he knows, she's his captor after all the things he's experienced, like in Allegiance and stuff like that.
I don't think so. Because I'm thinking of like Beverly and Vosh and like some women who have a little more. I feel like this woman wore him down. First of all, gaslighting him for 40 years that they're married,
Connection to the redheads.
but also, you know, Jordy has a better life. Does he though? But also, like, I feel like she wore him down with her kindness and her like effusion and her. I just adore the ground you walk on. Let me clean your shoes. Let me make you soup. Like, I think she just wore him down. Oh,
But-
sweet. Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead, John. Go ahead, Scott.
But is that because, again, it was part of the whole program because he's taking over the life of a certain person who probably didn't actually, you know, have this kind of trouble with his wife and I don't know, didn't end up separating with him. So she had to go through whatever and to keep them together. He was
Yes.
literally living someone else's life.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think if he wasn't married to her for decades, this isn't the woman he would choose. In my opinion, this doesn't seem like a Picard first choice.
I don't think he'd put himself in a situation in regular life to even get to the point of knowing her enough. He doesn't stick around that long to get worn down.
Yeah, and if
This
she
is
worked on the
true.
ship or something, he wouldn't like interact with her enough for her to wear him down. Like, he has breakfast with Beverly every day and has known her for 20 years. And the only time they kissed was in Allegiance when he was taken over by an alien and it wasn't even him. So yeah,
But then
like,
they have a kid.
but then they have a kid, right?
Yeah.
Because they have lots of deep hidden passions
And then
for
off
about
screen,
2
they have a
years
kid.
off screen before it all falls apart.
What was that one episode where they
Shockingly.
got drunk in like the second episode of season 1?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Well,
like,
they got drunk and
they set
Beverly
it
was
up
like,
in episode
Picard.
2.
And he was like, later, Beverly.
He's
Like,
like,
literally,
"Oh,
that's what he
no."
said. Later, Beverly. And he's like,
Yeah, he was like, oh, it was really.
So you're saying
really
every
weird.
time Picard has kids, and regardless of timeline, they're named after another dude. That seems to be what we're learning here.
Yep.
who's Jack's
Yep.
real dad?
Whoa.
Okay, we've only got about 15 minutes left. I've got a pile of questions left on screen here. My biggest question, we've talked about a lot of the positives and the fun stuff. Here's what has just bothered me and just kills my what's the word for it?
Immersion?
Brain cells.
Basically, but the God, I'll think of it later. Anyway, how does a race that's just starting to shoot off small missiles have the tech to make a psionic device that can not only clear the solar system before a nova goes off, but is able to do all this cool techie stuff by
And
a
sustain for 1,000
civilization that
years.
seemingly doesn't really have any tech?
Mhm.
They don't have like an automatic system for watering the tree, but they can do this. So I feel like there was some problem in their science system, like in schooling or something, where they were like, this is the most important thing, guys. We got to focus on psionic technology. It was somebody at the top made a big boo-boo because if they were able to create this, but they, couldn't create sprinklers or aqueducts, like, hey, hello.
Hey, Ren.
Yeah, that's my thinking. Is their level of tech for this one device? I don't know. I mean, I guess they didn't have any way to get off the planet or to get to another solar system, but it is a weird contrast to the lack of technology they seem to have in every other way.
It kind of reminds me of that DS9 episode where there were those colonists that decided to sort of like do away with technology and live off the land or
Oh,
whatever.
not
It was
nice.
much more of an enforced thing. But maybe, since they were sort of gatekeeping the knowledge around the Nova and they knew about it, maybe there's other things that they're keeping hidden from this population in terms of knowledge and technology and all of that. Because, yeah, you're right. It doesn't make sense that they would have this technology and not other things to sort of combat this.
And they did have
Picard-
sunblock. Picard invented it.
So you're saying somewhere out there,
Skin
there's a ship of elites that just escaped the planet with their super technology. While
And
these
all the
people-
water left
Yeah.
on that planet.
The term I was trying to
But if
think
it
of
was
before
built by
was
the Reskin movement,
suspension of
it probably couldn't have escaped the
disbelief.
supernova.
This, ever since I've first seen it as a kid, my suspension of disbelief has real trouble getting past the level of tech that's going on in this small little farming community that they said they've only just started to send up small missiles. Now, all right, not every race is going to follow Earth's same level of technology and progression, but it is such a stretch for me, and especially the part where the probe's going to make it to another star system in just 1,000 years. To put this into perspective, it seems about like our Voyager probes that we sent out 50 years ago, and it's going to take 25,000 years before they reach another star system. So there's a lot of suspension of disbelief that it's too much for me to think that this is the best episode of Star Trek.
Also, I wonder,
ahead.
since Picard has the knowledge to build ships, couldn't he have designed one, engineered one? I don't know.
Was he still abiding by the Prime Directive?
Not
If
according
he
to all
At
wasn't,
least
he
for
would've
the
found an
first
island
few
and hidden.
years.
Wild.
and not sired children that weren't his.
Well, if they're Bataille, then he was still along with the Prime Directive. But he did make sunblock for what good that did. He made a really big telescope, so there was that. Yeah, I don't know. Could he have made something, or could he have? No, I was going to say, or could he have helped make the probe? Yeah, I guess it doesn't matter if he made something because this society died 1,000 years ago. So whatever he made couldn't affect the trajectory of the storyline. So even if he made a rocket ship that could take one person or two people or, a family, a colony of people off the planet, and he invented that during his hallucination, which would be great, the star would still go nova, the planet would still die, the story would still need to be told.
It's also weird as an allegory for climate change because it's not their fault that this is happening. I don't know if you guys already talked about this since I'm coming in late to the party.
Nope, we
But
haven't.
it's clearly supposed to be a climate change allegory in a lot of ways with how the politicians are all hush hush about how bad it is and stuff. But they're also kind of right to be hush hush about it when they actually genuinely can't do anything about it. And it is not their fault. It's not like they're, what's the word? Releasing too many greenhouse gases or anything. They're not causing the climate change. Their sun's just dying. And that, it's still compelling, I think, as a story. It's just, as the allegory they've tried to build it up as, it's kind of weird.
And also, when he talks to the administrator, who, by the way, was in office for a very long time, but when he talks to the administrator,
too.
I was just like, why is this? Nobody voted for another person in his whole. Anyways, when he talks to the administrator is like,
Maxine
quiet you.
Waters.
Is that his name? Waters?
No, I was just making Maxine Waters, just died in office here at the age of 90 billion years old.
Oh, I thought you were saying this. That's this guy's name. And I was like, what? How did I miss
No.
that? That's a good connection. Anyways, so he was like, yeah, hush up. We already know about it. We don't want to scare the people. There's nothing we can do. So we've got stuff in the works to build a super secret probe. So we'll let them know that right before the sun goes nova. In the meantime, we're just going to keep it all quiet. And then he goes back to his dying wife's side, and she's like, Cayman, tell me, did they kick you off the council? Really? Is that what we're worried about right now? Where are the priorities in this family? And he's like, no, they knew it. It's all a big secret. We all got to keep it quiet. She's like, oh, okay, good. Now don't forget to bring your shoes inside. Okay.
Yeah, I never picked up on the climate change thing ever. Like ever. Because like the sun supernovaing has nothing to do with climate change.
Yeah.
I mean, the administrators keeping things on the hush, you know, that made like about 2 seconds of conflict before, you know, like what difference would it have made really? But yeah.
All right, let's get a few more questions in here. We talked about a little about the propaganda here. Is the probe Catan propaganda for a romanticized history or a truthful document about an extinct population?
Probably a bit of both.
I mean, there's nothing. They're not showing any of their negative sides for the most part. They must have
But
had
to
some
be
deep dark secrets.
fair, I wouldn't if I was making a one-shot probe to encapsulate our culture.
Sure.
I wouldn't be like, oh, and let me tell you about this horrible person who did all this horrible stuff. Like I wouldn't if I've only got 25 years of information to squeeze into someone's existence and maybe, you know, just like minutes here and there of experiences, I'd probably do the same thing. I'd focus on a small average community. Maybe I'd have some scoundrels in the community because that's what makes a community well-rounded.
Love
But
a good
like
scoundrel.
you gotta have a
Gotta
couple
have a
like,
black
you know,
market.
or like the kid who kicks puppies or something like that. Like
Oh, no.
that's the boy, you know, he's always
You'd
you
include
gotta
a
have some,
puppy
like
kicker.
you gotta have some-
One of the most
Kid
like
carves
the
his
thing
name
that,
in the tree.
like
Your flute
One
playing
tree?
sucks, Cayman.
I used to date an archaeologist, and one of the most distinct features of an archaeological dig that she told me about was like war. You would find fire, you would find tool marks, you would find weapons. The fact that there was just absolutely no conflict above a little bit of interpersonal static here and there, that to me is such a robbery of truth. And I think if you're going to send a probe to say, we existed, we're here, and just like paint rainbows and unicorns, like what's the purpose of that? That's so lacking in dynamism and memorability. Like, oh, what's he going to tell these people about these people? Like, oh, these people that like to grow trees had their sun go supernova. Like, there's almost nothing to them besides their tie-dye clothes, you know? Oh, and they play the
And the
flute.
flute.
Mhm.
You know, and not to say that conflict
I
is
was the one kicking puppies. That's why they-
yeah, well, not to say that conflict is the only thing that makes something distinct, but having everything be so like idealistic and flat is just like, what is the point of documenting that? What is the point of sending a probe to say we're great? Like what?
I like
We
that
existed
they
and we're
treat us
great.
like humans. I think that's my favorite thing about this episode is that this is just a planet full of humans somewhere. And like, I mean, if you could argue that they changed it to match Picard, but then if they did that, what's the point of that? Because then it doesn't look like them. But it seems bogus that they just look like completely unaltered humans. They don't even have like pointy ears or forehead ridges. They're just little guys.
No, like
Yeah,
dot candy on their forehead,
Yeah.
no stripes like those dudes like that were selling the Tula Berry wine and get in the Gamma Quadrant.
Ooh.
Nothing. It's just like we're just people.
But the thinking is, at least my thinking is that when it scanned his brain, when the probe did whatever it did, it adjusted the hallucination to match his like perceptions and his features is what I always assumed. That's easier to slide him into that culture than to make him a trill or something like that. And to be like, you've always had spots. They're already trying to sell him enough lies that I
that's
think body image issues on top of it all would just like break any chance. I never had these big, you know, Ferengi ears before. I'm sure of it. It would have
He
been
just
like
wakes
maybe
up as
one
a
too
Gorn.
many.
Like, this is totally normal.
Right. You've
Just-
always been a Gorn, honey. You had a fever for the last couple days and you forgot.
Don't you want to have babies and lay them in other people's bodies so that they hatch in an hour?
Speaking of trying to sell him a lie, was gaslighting Picard the most effective way to live on in the future for this society?
No. Especially with their magical psychic powers.
I mean, it worked, but
You know what they could have done now that I think about it? They could have made like an interactive hologram
Ooh, that'd be
with
fun.
this same psionic-y whatever. that could maybe, you know how Data has like a knowledge of all the colonists in his positronic nets, and he can like
Yeah.
pull up their voices and their like journals and stuff. If they did something like that, where with some kind of interactive hologram where you could pull up some of the villagers or some of the people, just a small representation, however many they could fit inside the probe, that could have been really cool. And that could have been something that people could appreciate, people could experience, lots of people could experience. I think that would have done a better job of keeping their culture alive than what this has to become, which is a report that Picard types up and submits to Starfleet. Like, that's all it's going to be. And I guess it goes into the history books and they teach it at the academy. But for something that, you know, if you really want your culture to be experienced and to live on, I think that would have been more effective.
You just reminded me, Stargate actually did an episode like that, where they had a holographic interface guy that was able to interact with them. But do you think they would have, would they have still sent it out this way? Or should they have just like sent several of them out? What would have been the best procedure there?
Well, I'm saying the same situation, but instead of
So
like
just
a
the one
probe,
probe with the hologram
that
on it.
brain jacks you, it'd be the probe with the hologram on it that like zooms into your spaceship or whatever.
Hello, fellow people.
They could do a museum like in Living Witness.
There's not a whole lot like
Yeah.
the main drive of this culture, the main drive of this episode is the emotional impact on Picard. But if you just set aside just the culture itself, I don't really know that you wouldn't pick it up just fine reading about it or, you know, like picking up a pad and going, oh, these people in tie-dye, you know, got a sunburn and then they went supernova. Like, there's not a whole hell of a lot to it. So I don't know that like this was necessarily the best delivery system for that information.
Yeah, I mean, to add to kind of what Dell's saying here, I know more about the Tamarians in their like Shakespearean way of storytelling just by talking than I do about this culture. I always feel like it's, oh, hey, cool, Picard gets to experience 30 years of life as a plumber in New Mexico. Oh boy, I've learned so much about this society and what a great life I've lived.
It's kind of like Serjanka, right? Where you're like, they have long fingers and glitter on their skin, and their planet has a lot of earthquakes and volcanoes, and that's all you know about these people. And that's kind of all you need to know for the purposes of the episode. But I think the biggest challenge for me really is the fact that they're relying on Picard to tell their story, to like verbally sit and explain what he experienced over 25 years. Well, I had this wife, and then we had 2 kids, but it was probably Bati's kids. But then also there was this tree, right? But it was a drought. But we would take our water and put it in the tree. But then also I had made sunblock because they didn't have sunblock, even though they had a drought. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like that's my bigger issue with this.
They had
delivery
hats.
system.
They had hats.
They would have
They
made
did
the
have
same
hats.
impact if they just broadcast their music, because all that came out of this is Picard playing the flute. So just
feel like-
broadcast the radio forever.
Playing it
To
beautifully.
answer one of the comments, I feel like the Orville did something kind of similar with A Happy Refrain, right? The one where Malloy falls in love with the girl from the cell phone with all the like cell phone data from
Yeah.
the past.
Oh.
And I actually think that was
Yeah.
arguably kind of better executed.
It is.
I like
Absolutely.
this episode, but that one like makes me cry every time.
They should have let him.
That seemed
stay.
more like an extended version of
Oh yeah, the one where he goes to the
1100-100.
past and has a kid, and they make him come back to the
Yep.
future and
Yep,
unexist his wife and
that's-
kid fucks me
Oh,
up.
That's
yes.
like the
That
antithesis
episode
of
was
this episode.
diabolical.
Okay,
I
we
think-
have a.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
You learned
I was
a
just
lot,
gonna say,
Carlin.
I think it's interesting that the probe chose Picard out of like everyone on the ship, and I'm glad that it didn't choose Diana because if it did, it would have been the like mental anguish planet.
It would have been like a regular Tuesday for her. She'd be like, okay, another mind assault.
Oh, hey, mind
Bring it,
salt.
whatever.
Oh, more babies
Yeah, hey,
that I
mind
have
salt.
that I don't get to keep.
Right. Just be like, here we go again. Why am I still working for Starfleet?
But see, on this planet, they would have, well, maybe they're pro-life here too. Who the hell knows? But like, I would just abort something.
Abort something, anything.
All right, let me get one more question in, and then we'll do out of 10s. Does marriage plus kids equal meaningful life seem an old-fashioned trope, even for the 90s?
I would have been bothered by it if they had picked a woman, honestly, but I actually think it works because they picked Picard, who's notoriously private, who, as far as we know, never has that kind of a domestic life. And so I think for him, a life like that is so completely alien from his actual life and gives him such a different experience that it's almost like a road not taken sort of thing. And I kind of like that for him. I like domestic Picard. It's fun to see him raise the kids and, you know, be with his wife and make his little community friends and everything. I think it's adorable.
Yeah, I think it's old fashioned even for the 90s.
Sorry.
But
Mhm.
no, go ahead. That was my 2 cents. I think it's old fashioned even for the 90s, but I always hate it when they do that. So
yeah, I think there's a conception, not just the 90s, but now, that single men are miserable. That like single men are the most miserable, that we're, you know, we have the male loneliness epidemic now. And it's like, being single is not a horrible thing. And I think Picard has a pretty fulfilling life. And I don't like characterize him as solely a single person. He has, you know, a very wide net of a support system. He has a very fulfilling career. And that can be enough. So for this, yeah, I do think it's a bit old fashioned that to like say that the pinnacle of a fulfilling life has to be with wife and baby and, you know, all of that. That being
in
said,
a council seat.
yeah. And, but like also, as Ren said, it is kind of like a road not taken kind of thing. Like this could have been your life in another.
If you were not Picard, this could have been
Yeah.
your life, basically. Because to your point, not only does he not have those things, he also seems to not want those things.
Exactly.
Like at no point is he the door down being like, oh, I just need to talk to you, Deanna. I'm just so lonely without a woman. Like, just,
right.
you know, women hit on
He's
him
not
like
lovelorn, you know, he's not like Cisco, who finds fulfillment out of romance and
family
connection and having a child and everything. If anything, he's kind of the opposite in a lot of ways. Like, he loves his alone time. He loves his books. He loves his poetry. He loves a little to toot toot on his little piccolo. So yeah.
He loves a little toot toot.
Vanessa, are you trying to say that Picard would be subscribed to the Andrew Tate podcast?
No.
He might read it about it. He wouldn't listen to it. Because that is another thing that this actually brought up, is not just outside of the family life. This is also fulfilling one of Picard's dreams of experiencing a long dead civilization.
Oh, true.
And see, and that's the thing. I think Vanessa said earlier, what if they were like, oh, or maybe it was you, Josh, if they were like, you know, you're an archaeologist. Here's our cultural history inside this probe. You want to check it out? I think he'd be like, bet, let's go. You know, and he'd be in there like, oh, cool, this is my archaeology wife. Let's go. You know what I mean? I think he'd be more bought into the whole experience had he known it was a form of archaeology versus, oh, I have a wife? That doesn't seem like me. You know? That doesn't seem like something I would do, but okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
We need that to be a t-shirt.
If he picked Riker, he'd be like, play Nightbird.
I'm still surprised
I
his
want
first
Nightbird
instinct
to
wasn't
pick
to
those.
think it was Q, though. I would have assumed he would have just been
You're
like,
so
Q.
right.
Yeah, right after like computer end program. Q, come on, dude. What the
And
fuck?
then Q's his wife the whole time. And it's like,
That would have been a great long game right at the end.
Birth. This is crazy.
Mon Capitan.
We meet
Picard's
again,
always
Jean-Luc,
rolling over in bed and waking up next to Q.
like it was meant to be.
Okay, let's give this thing a ranking out of 10. I know some people find this to be the 10 out of 10 episode. For me, it's gotten better since the first time I saw it. As a kid, I would have told you this is about as good as Samaritan Snare. I did not like this one as a kid. I could not get past all of the technical problems that I just could not conceive this society being able to get over to get this probe out to where it is to meet Picard. But if you take all of the sciencey stuff out of the episode, yeah, it would be like a 9 or a 10. If this was all science and it's really bad science, it's like a 2. I'm gonna give it a 7. It's really decent. It's really good for Picard as long as you can, set all of those other things aside. So yeah, 7.
It's so funny because I have kind of the opposite experience where when I was a kid, I absolutely loved this episode. This would have been a 10 out of 10 episode for me. But the more I've like actually thought about the nuts and bolts of the episode, the more the problems start to emerge. I do still like this episode though. I like Domestic Picard. I like that it's a change of pace for him. And I like that although it does not change his like the course of his life at all, like he doesn't decide, oh yes, I want a family now. It does still affect him as far as we know for the rest of his life. Like we see him talk about it at least one other time in lessons when he plays the Rissican with piano lady Dara, is that her name?
Darren.
Anyway. And like I think that's really good. I think it's a nice way to like dig deeper into Picard a little bit. And the family was really cute, and the like tragedy at the end does hit. So overall, I'd give this one like an 8.5. It's not one that I ever skip.
Yeah, so this
That
is
rhythm.
not. Yeah, I'm hearing it too. But it sounds like the workers from that episode where Data's dreaming.
It's my partner chopping wood.
Okay.
That was gonna be my second guess.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good episode for most of the points everyone's made. It's a great showcase for Picard. The way they get there is a little wonky, but it's some great acting for Patrick Stewart. It's fun to get him to see. How do I phrase it? It's fun to get to see him working with his actual son. Playing the flute thing obviously is a pretty big thing that sticks out to a lot of people in the history of TNG. I think was it James K? Somebody mentioned earlier in the chat that DS9 kind of copied this with Hard Time. I actually think I like Hard Time better, but
Me too.
that's my own personal opinion.
Trek is all about copy pasting. They should get better every time they retell the story.
I just like the way they weave that into the story better than here. It impacts things more. But and overall, this is definitely a memorable episode. It's not up there on my top 10 list or top 20 list or anything, but I'd probably give it maybe about a 7.5. It's definitely above average.
This episode I know is such a fan favorite. Like if you have anybody who's seen all of TNG, this episode is going to be at the top of a lot of people's lists. Understandably so, because to Ren's point, like the emotional part totally hits. And I always cry at the reunion scene. Like everyone you've loved who's died tragically is suddenly back and young and beautiful. It's just like a really moving moment. It's not one of my top 10. It's not one of my top 20. And I think it's for some of the reasons we mentioned of kind of like tricking Picard into like thinking this is his life just to be like, it's only been 20 minutes. I think that's kind of messed up to do to somebody. Giving him all these deep connections and forcing it down his throat to make him love this woman and then killing her. I don't know. It's just like, I think it's pretty sad. And I do think the story is very simple and kind of lovely. It's just like, what if you had ties to people and you lost them? And this is our way to share our story. I kind of like that idea that they're going in. I don't super love the purpose of life is to have a spouse and children and be head of the council. I don't super love that message. I feel like the characters are kind of meh. I think the actors are great, but I think their characterizations are not awesome. So I think I will give this a 6. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but to Nadia's point, there's so many better TNG episodes. So, yep.
Okay, I will admit this one is pretty high on my list. All the stuff we've been talking about, though, the stuff that would bring it down to be problematic, I really never noticed that until after I'm done watching and think about it. Because while I'm in it, immersed in the episode, I'm just like, these are really surprisingly good people, and Picard's living a good and simple life. Everybody seems to like him. Richard Reel, it really, really is one of his better roles in Trek. And Picard comes out of it a better man, and and he's learned to play the flute. So it's definitely not like top 10, but I would give it, I think, a solid 8.
So, like, for me, this episode is more about Picard's character development and emotional palette widening, more so than anything plot driven or any like technical things or like even the culture here. Because like we have mentioned, there's things about the culture they could have fleshed out. There's things about the characters they could have fleshed out. There's things about the technology they could have fleshed out, and they chose not to. Instead, what they focused on mostly is giving Picard, as Scott said, a simple life where he's well loved by his community and he is a person that's respected, and a whole life where he has children. And gets to experience that. So I guess it really depends on how I perceive the episode. Like as a Star Trek episode, it's okay. As an episode of television, just generally, it's pretty good. I would give it. So I'm a little ambivalent on it. So I would give it like a 6.5. I think that there's things that they could have done to make this a bit more impactful. And I wish that the emotionality of this episode had a more lasting effect beyond the Piccolo playing. Like there was like some, not that he would like abandon Starfleet and get a family or whatever, but like, as Shereese mentioned, like a softening of the edges or something. But yeah, 6.5.
Before I throw out some final thoughts on this, while we have a pile of people still watching live, next week is Buffer Time, episode 100. We've been doing this for a while. So next week, we're going to do just a fun thing where we talk about what Star Trek means to us and why we like it. So, I know going through a lot of the movies here in the previous weeks, we've had a lot of, this is going to be negative, isn't it? Not next week. So that's the thing. I'm not sure if we're going to take a break right after that. We might do one more episode and then take a month break until Strange New World starts in July. After that, we're definitely going to come back around to Trek adjacent movies this fall, being Galaxy Quest, that I know a lot of you have requested. We'll do Galaxy Quest, we'll do Spaceballs, and we will do the fan-made Trek movie of Gods and Men. Okay, so my final thoughts on this episode. I was always worried when I started my channel about talking anything negative about this, because I know so many people are like, this is the best episode of TNG. This is the best episode of Star Trek. It's in top 10 of the 900 episodes. And I was always worried about talking about it negatively and like losing people. What got me to be able to talk about the nuance of this, I highly recommend, if anybody hasn't seen it, go find YouTuber Alison Pregler's video on this. She is not a big fan, and it's just the way she lays stuff out about it is hilarious, and she'll make you find some just random things that just aren't quite right in the episode. But yeah, like I'm quite surprised that our numbers here are from a 6 to a 9.5, actually. Definitely a couple of years ago, I would have given it a 5 or a 6. Every time I watch it, it grows a little bit more on me.
Do you remember where it was in your ranking of all the Trek shows?
Just over half. I think I had it like number 327 out of 755 originally. So right about a 6.5 then. So me giving it a 7 now is yeah, even this last time I just watched it today, I'm like, yeah, I like it, all because of Picard. As long as you can put aside the bad science.
I think if I hadn't thought too deeply about this episode, probably when I first watched it, it would have been higher, probably like an 8, maybe even a 9, because it's so emotional, which TNG is usually not. It usually does not make me cry. Like The Offspring makes me cry. This makes me cry. Like I could name them. So well, because Waxana is crying the whole time. So I think
Real life.
without thinking too deeply, like what Scott said, just like watching and just enjoying, I would have rated it way higher. But doing any level of critical thinking, and especially with like the whole just have a family so you can be complete. I think that just, yeah, that's the only reason why it's not the best episode of all time in my world. And I would say that about every single thing we've ever reviewed on this channel or for the TNG podcast. When you think too deeply and you start picking at the layers, then like your love of things can sometimes go down, but other times go way, way, way up when you're like, oh, I missed all this stuff. So maybe the secret ingredient is not thinking too hard.
But by the way, Of Gods and Men is free. It always has been. I think it's
Yeah, I've
even
never
on
heard of that.
YouTube for
Nice.
free.
It used to be
It's
on YouTube.
directed by Tim Russ, aka Tuvok. It's got a ton of Trek alums like Garrett Wong. Trying to think of who else. It's got
Alan-
I'm already in. Tim Russ,
yeah.
Garrett Wong, in.
Yep, that's all I need. I'm good.
Yeah, we need no more descriptions.
John Harris. I
I
mean,
would watch an entire
character
movie
John
with just
Harriman.
those two.
Nichelle Nichols is in it before she died.
is Alita in this one, or is that the other one?
Yes. Yep. Nope.
Okay.
That's that
Chase
one.
Masterson.
Yep. Chase Masterson's in it.
Hell
Yeah, there's a ton of Trek alum, and Gary
Mitchell.
died a few years ago. No, Gary Saval.
Oh, Graham.
Yeah, Gary Graham. Yeah, there's a bunch of Trek alum in this. It's not like the best movie, but I mean most Trek movies aren't. Considering it's fan made, it's pretty good though. I like it. I like it better than quite a few of the movies we've talked about. So I recommend going watching it, but that probably won't be till about October that we get to that.
Man,
So.
for movies, Trek sure sets the bar at a different level than the shows do.
They sure have a ladder.
And it's a long one.
And they go up it with lots of hay
And chickens and Irish people.
and steam coming out of your ears like a cartoon, because that's what happens when you drink synthahol whiskey.
Saints preserve us.
All right. Well, this has been fun. I would like to thank you all for showing up and talking about the Inner Light with me, and for all of you for tuning in. And tune in again when we do our 100th episode and just generally talk about what we love about Star Trek. Until then,